anyway. So, all right, we are off. Well, good evening, everybody. Hello, welcome one and all to this, the very first installment of Must Read TV, the Skylark Bookshop Virtual Author Series. My name is Alex George, and I'm the owner of Skylark, an independent bookstore which is located in downtown Columbia, Missouri. And I'm really thrilled that you are all here this evening. Every week, mostly on Thursdays, but not always, because that would be far too easy. From now until September and beyond, we're going to be featuring a wonderful author to talk to you about their latest book. And I am so excited to welcome the very wonderful Byron Lane to be our inaugural guest. His novel, A Star is Born, is one of the most talked about debut novels of the season and has been everywhere since it was published all of 2 days ago. Byron is going to be introduced and interviewed by Mary O'Malley, Skylark's newest recruit, whose official title is Free Range Virtual Bookseller at Large. Mary's been with us for a few weeks now, and we are so happy to welcome her to the good ship Skylark. Many of you will have already seen her Thursday morning book talks. If you haven't, then you should absolutely tune in on Facebook because they are wonderful. And I'm very excited that you'll now get a chance to really see her in her natural habitat, which is talking to authors. Before we get going, a couple of things. If you have a question for Byron, please write it in the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom screen. Or if you're watching on Facebook Live, which I hope if I've done everything correctly, you could be, then just type it in the comments and we'll get questions to Mary, always assuming I can type quickly enough. I'd also like to encourage all of you, please, to go to the Skylark website, which is skylarkbookshop.com, and have a look at the events page. Please consider making Must Read TV a regular part of your Thursday evenings. We really do have a stellar lineup of authors. Next week, we have Charlotte Mcconaughey, who is the author of the stunning novel Migrations, which was the #1 Indie Next pick for August. And she's going to be talking to her editor, who also, perhaps not entirely coincidentally, is my editor, Carolyn Blakey. And she, yeah, it's all inside job, but it's a wonderful, wonderful novel, and it's great. Finally, in these COVIDian times, if you enjoy today's conversation, it would be really tremendously helpful to us and will help us put on more of these kinds of events if you purchase Byron's book from Skylark. And if you do that, we will send you a pristine first edition, complete with a signed bookplate. But that is not all. Okay, so here is where it gets a tiny bit weird. So one of the great things about doing author events in the bookshop is the opportunity to interact with the author and really get to know them and relate to them. Now, technology is fine and everything, but it's not the same thing. And so we were discussing whether we could do something with Byron that was unique for Skylark customers. And one of us, I shall name no names, had the idea that we should ask Byron to write a haiku. And rather to our astonishment, but also to our delight, he agreed. And so what we're going to do is hand print 25 copies of this haiku. And then we're going to have Byron sign and number each of them. And then we thought, we're going to call them Skyku. So we will send these Skyku to the first 25 people who purchase a copy of A Star is Born from us. Now, quite a few people have already purchased the book from us ahead of today's event. And if that's you, then don't worry, you are on our list. And so we will get one of these Skyku to you. We will allocate the remaining ones on a first come, first served basis. To reserve your copy of the book and also to get one of the Skyku, just drop us an email at mail@skylarkbookshop.com with your telephone number, and we will call you tomorrow to take care of payment and shipping. And we're doing it by email just so that we have a very precise order, or a way of telling the order in which people made their requests, so we know where we can cut it off. You know, numbers are very limited. And we're bound to run out. So for fear of sounding like an announcer on the shopping channel, email us now, make that call, So anyway, well, it will surprise absolutely nobody to know that I've already talked far too much. So I will hand it over to Mary and Byron, and with luck, I will be able to make myself disappear off the screen. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy the evening. Mary?
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.
Oh my gosh. So again, welcome, Byron. Thank you for being our first author for Must Read TV. And for those of you who are joining us tonight who maybe don't know Byron is an author, a playwright, and a screenwriter. And he has just released this week his first novel, A Star is Bored. And this book is inspired by Byron's time as a personal assistant to the one, the only amazing, one-of-a-kind Carrie Fisher.
Yeah.
And we're gonna ask Byron some questions about his time working for Carrie. But first, I thought it would be great, Byron, if you would do a little reading from your book.
Yes, I'd love that. So I'll tell you where we're going to start with this small selection. This is so the book is inspired by the 3 years I worked for Carrie Fisher. It's about a celebrity assistant trying to manage his eccentric movie star boss. And so this is right after he gets the call for a job interview. So he's showing up at her big mansion. He's passed through the big gates. He's walked up the crazy walkway, and now he's at the front door, and he knocks. The air seems to thin out to make way for her. The front door swings open, and like embers shooting up from a fire, she appears, her hair blown back by the door, an e-cigarette dangling from her mouth. Her eyes widen and her lips part, and she says, "Hello, I'm Kathi Kannon from Jaws 3. I hold my breath and stare at her. Kathi Kannon, priestess Talara, real and living, barefoot and disheveled, dressed in a flowing black robe over a loose black t-shirt and tattered black leggings. She's wearing no makeup, no pomp or circumstance, no fucks to give. Her face is tired but alert, familiar and yet mysterious. She looks so much like the woman I remember from my childhood movies, yet donning gravity and time like some kind of disguise, like some kind of mask that's taken up residence upon her, leaving her both an old, beautiful acquaintance and a strange, fresh new one. You answer your own door, I blurt, a mix of surprise and enchantment as my eyes adjust to her like they're suddenly seeing daylight. Yeah, she says, we had a butler, but he died in the pantry a few years ago. Who are you? I'm Charlie Besson. I'm a big fan. You don't look very big, she responds, intimidatingly sharp for being so tiny, 5'1", with all that life squeezed into that little frame. She grabs the door as if ready to slam it on me. I'm here for the personal assistant job, I say. Not the colonic, Kathi says, disappointed, yanking the e-cigarette from her lips and letting her hand flop to her side, her shoulders slumping, her other hand still holding the front door, letting it sway slightly closed, then open, then closed, then open, as if she's considering. Excitement drains from my limbs. A colonic? Oh, this is why I was granted such quick entry. She expected someone else. I'm not who she wants, of course. Sorry, I start, feeling the magnitude of the not completely unexpected moment. My unforgettable hero has forgotten we had an appointment. Cue my shame, horror, foolishness. Except I notice Kathi Kannon beginning to smile. She stands up straight, pops the e-cigarette back in her mouth, lets go of the front door, allowing it to swing wide open. Acting, she says smugly, raising her eyebrows, proud of herself. Wow, I say, speechless, entranced. I'm just fucking with you, Kathi says dryly. Come in. She turns casually and walks into the wonderland that is her home, motioning for me to follow. She moves with ease, her comfort and calm at odds with the commanding surroundings. We're in the definition of a great room with vaulted ceilings and a huge disco ball the size of an oven affixed high overhead. Sunlight from a skylight is hitting the little square mirrors of the ball and sending twisting and twirling bits of pinks and blues and purples all around. The far wall is covered in antique portraits of animals, someone's beloved cat, an aristocrat's precious dog, a bird that looks suspiciously like Sean Penn. Kathi turns back to me as I pass through the doorway. Oh, please wipe your feet, she says. The floors are made of endangered trees. And that's the beginning of Charlie's adventure with Kathi.
I was talking about this book today on my book talk, and I said, the further away I get from it, the more I just love it. I read this months ago, and I just, at least once a week, some scene from this book will pop into my head. And that to me is the mark of a great book for me, when I just can't stop it from popping into my head. And it's such a fascinating story, and it's inspired by your time working for Carrie Fisher. It's not about Carrie Fisher. But how did you get that job, Byron? How does one become a personal assistant to someone like Carrie Fisher?
So I had studied journalism in college and worked as a TV news reporter for many years, including in Vegas. And then I got a job working the middle of the night as a news writer in Los Angeles. And I was there for like 7 years. And it's hard to work in the middle of the night. And it was depressing being in news. And so I was hoping for some way out. And I had started acting and writing and all that stuff. And a friend of mine who I knew from an indie movie that I wrote and produced, he had a friend who worked at Gersh. That was a talent agency in LA that Carrie was working with at the time. And so this friend knew that I was a writer and knew that I was like a responsible, serious person. And Carrie and her team, they were looking for a writer and a responsible, serious person to help her with her books and her novels and her schedule and getting organized and all that stuff. So my friend at Gersh sent me an email that said, do you want to work for Princess Leia? She's looking for an assistant. And I said, I don't know, but I hated the job. I wanted something different. And I thought to myself, well, I'm going to leave this career. Who better to go work for than Carrie Fisher? So I said, please, can we meet? So we had a meeting, and that was that.
That's just amazing. And so you're working for Carrie Fisher. Was there a certain point, or was it cumulative, where you were like, I gotta write some of this stuff down? There's a book here.
The book idea didn't come till much later, but I will tell you, every moment with her was rich. Every moment with her was full of interesting moments. She was so smart, so fast, so funny, and nothing was ever dull. Nothing was ever pedestrian. She even nicknames. She gave me nicknames that were off the wall. It just kept things interesting all the time. And her house, even if you saw from the HBO documentary Bright Lights, you can see the house is colorful. It's fun. Flowers everywhere. Weird things hanging from the ceiling. Never a dull moment. So the other thing about all those experiences is that I'm really just like this poor kid from Louisiana, and I'm walking into this mansion in Beverly Hills. So everything was enhanced and heightened. My senses were always on high alert, and those are circumstances that are hard to forget. So it really was, spending time with her was a time of just absorbing all this stuff. And most days, even though it was a job, were full of moments that were unforgettable, really.
And you captured so much of that in this book. I just felt like I was in those rooms and I was meeting those people, and her personality you captured so beautifully. And when you think now, if you were to close your eyes and picture Carrie, what's the first thing that comes to mind about her?
My favorite thing to think about with Carrie is her laughing. She was the one that usually made people laugh. She kept people on their toes and amused. So in the few rare moments where I had a clever comment or made some weird mistake that amused her, those really felt like moments of treasure. And so when I think about those moments, it always brings a smile to my face. So that's where I like to go.
Wow. I think that would definitely, that would be a triumph to make someone like her laugh, for sure.
It's definitely a victory. Yep.
And so if you could go back to young Byron Lane walking into that house the first time, is there anything you'd tell yourself now that, you kind of wish you had known, or you would have, wouldn't have been a surprise, or something that would have made it either easier or a quicker adjustment for you?
I want to say that I would say to my younger self, relax and enjoy this ride because it's going to be the time of your life. So that's what I think I would say to myself. But here's the problem, is that if I was relaxed and if I was prepared to enjoy it, I think I would have lacked a little bit of the uptight seriousness that I brought to the table, which was the polar opposite of Carrie, and which is part of the reason I think we worked well together. She could appreciate someone who kept her a little bit more grounded and her life a little bit more structured. And I grew to appreciate someone who could help me loosen up a little and have a little fun and find some humor in everyday situations. And I think the compliment there is what made it feel so magical for me. So I'm nervous about anything that would disrupt that. So my instinct would be to say calm down, but I think the truth is it happened just like it should have.
Beautiful, beautiful. I agree completely. My husband hates when I say that about him, that he keeps me grounded. He keeps me from, getting too flighty. But it's a great partnership that way, that complementary. So yeah, I imagine that you guys were a great team. And
it felt that way. And I think it fosters a little bit of respect. So I can respect that she wants to live life to the fullest. She could respect that I'm a little bit more reserved. And then once you have this respect thing going on, you have this honesty that's available, and then that leads to good communication, that leads to unconditional love. So it really does all sort of stack and build on each other. And I'm grateful that we had all these ingredients in there,
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's the character in the book seemed to test boundaries with you on a regular basis. Like, how far could she push you? Is that a little, was that pretty true to form?
Well, I tried to infuse Kathi in the book and Charlie with qualities that did make them polar opposites. And so in real life, Carrie, there was no, she was just being herself. So I don't think that she ever consciously was like, today boundaries will be pushed. I think she just thought, well, what makes things a little bit more colorful today? What's going to put a smile on someone's face? And so I think it was a little bit more innocent in the book, because it's fiction and I'm able to heighten everything and add so much imagination. I think you'll notice that maybe Kathi Kannon does have a little bit more of like, let's push some boundaries. Let's make things a little more wild than they could be. And likewise, Charlie is heightened too. He's a little bit more restrictive, and it just made for a more fun dynamic to write.
Yeah, and it was a fun dynamic to read. Absolutely. So when I think of Carrie in the later years, because I've loved her from day one as a young girl, seeing this, larger than life woman portraying, a different kind of female character. But in later years, there's an episode of The Big Bang Theory where Sheldon finds James Earl Jones in a restaurant and, thinks that he's going to get yet another restraining order. Instead, James takes him all over town until Sheldon can't take it anymore. And one of the things they do that night is they play Ding Dong Ditch on Carrie Fisher. And so they go to the door and she really comes out. And she comes out in the bathrobe with hair kind of disheveled, with a baseball bat saying, "James, it isn't funny anymore." And I just look at that and think, and that's the image that kept coming up as I was reading your book, was this just, she is who she is. She's a flawed human. She's not pretending to be anything else. And she's a real person. And so I loved that just moment of her in that show. And that's the same feeling I got as I read the pages of your book. I loved it. And I felt like that's the Carrie that you captured so beautifully.
Thanks. I did try to capture her spirit in the character of Kathi Kannon. There's a bunch of other stuff mixed in too, but I did want there to be some heart and truth in there. And fun little note, I was with her that day when she shot that scene. She had a great time on set, loved meeting everyone. Everyone was so cool. and they had called ahead of time and asked what brand nightgown does she like. So they tried to match all that stuff. And one weird detail is her nightgowns were all white. That company is a fancy company, and they only made like white nightgowns, you know.
Gotcha.
And but they didn't want a white nightgown on TV, so they bought the nightgown and then dyed it purple, I think. And so that's what you see. That's what you see on TV.
Love it, love it, love it. I have one more question about the book itself, and that is this tight, very much a hierarchy clique of personal assistants. Is that what it's like out there in the personal assistant world? I imagine you're working for these high-level celebrities, and so that, you know, you can't go out and just talk to your buddies about some of the stuff, but maybe you can in this group.
Right. So you know, it's a small world in Hollywood. So and in New York, the celebrities in New York. So there are these groups of assistants that get together. There's a big one in New York. There's a big one in LA. They do get together. They do hang out. In LA, my experience, I never did go to an actual meetup, although they happened. I just never went. And so it's mostly just an email chain. So people would email and then reply and then reply and reply with all kinds of questions like, do you guys know a gluten-free vegan chef familiar with the book, The Plant Paradox? You know, or where can we get someone to come install a mirror who will wear booties so they don't mess up the new marble floor? So just all these kind of things. And it was a good resource for all of us to have those folks. And also, you know, things we could talk to each other about that, that, you know, you can't tell your best friend or your therapist. And so my relationship with some of those folks, some of it is just via email. I've met individually with a couple of the other assistants, and they're beautiful people. And it is a lovely community of really hardworking folks who are giving a little bit of themselves to someone else.
Yeah, yeah. As a former assistant, not to celebrities, I understand you give a lot of yourself to the job and to the people you're working for. And yeah, it takes a special personality to be able to do that. So we do have a question from somebody watching who wants to know, what did you learn about yourself while you were writing this book?
Oh, wow. While I was writing this book, it really became clear to me while I was writing it that what Carrie really taught me, my take home from that experience with her, was to relax. I was really serious when I started my time with her, really uptight, really stressed a lot. And she taught me that I can be really stressed about something and almost everything always works out. So she taught me I can skip the stressful part and just jump to the works out part. And that in that space, you find a lot more humor in life, a lot more joy. Everything can be a good time, even if it's just going to the grocery store or whatever. So, so I would say that's what I learned. That's what I learned while writing the book. It just became clear to me, that beautiful lesson that she taught me while I was with her.
I like that. That should be embroidered and hung up. You know, skip the stressful and just go to everything works out. That's a great lesson for all of us. Absolutely. And can you tell us a little bit about your actual writing process? Do you find it exhilarating? Do you find it exhausting? What does your routine look like?
I'm pretty chill about it. I try to be disciplined. I try to have a set number of hours every day where I'm going to town. And I've also found that helps sometimes when I'm in a moment of maybe writer's block, or where I'm not sure where to go next. Sometimes just writing and writing and writing, even if it's stuff you know might never get seen or might never make it into the book, sometimes you find your answers that way. I heard someone say once, sometimes it's possible that the answer you're looking for is at the end of the book. So just keep going. And so that's keep going is really my mantra for when I'm writing. That's the main thing. Stay there. And I find myself saying that all the time when people are like, I just started, and I'm always like, keep going, you know, don't give up. You don't know what gems you'll find. So that's my process. My process is keep going, get it going.
I love it. I love it. So the end of your book, you have an epic way to end a book. And for anybody who doesn't read an author's acknowledgments, your book, I think, will change that forever. Can you tell us what you put at the end of your acknowledgments and how that went?
So I've been dating author Stephen Rowley for 7 years. It'll be 7 years in August. And we both talked about marriage, but we never talked about exactly how it would all play out. And I thought to myself, well, it isn't every day that I'm going to have a debut novel out, and this would be a really special way to ask him to marry me. And I wonder if I can do that in the book. And it was a last minute decision. So the advanced reader copies had already been printed, were already in people's hands, in people's homes. They were already reading them, and the hardcover was on its way to the printer. So I reached out to my editor and I said, hey, can I add a few words to the acknowledgement? And he was like, what words? And I said, I want to ask Steve to marry me. Is it okay if we, and he was like, of course. Oh my God, let me see what we can do. And so he got on the phone and whatever editors do. And he was like, we got it. So at the time it was a little bit stressful because the truth is Stephen, I love him and he loves me, but you never know that someone will for sure say yes. And so I was nervous about that. I had a recurrence of testicular cancer, so I was going through chemo at the time. I just finished that, and I'm healthy and good, by the way.
Awesome.
But at the time, I was tired and fatigued, so I had that stress going on. And but finally, the book arrives. He had it rushed out to me once it was done with the printer, and I opened it to the back. And Steve has read this novel so many times, so I just said, "Hey, babe, I made a change to the back. Can you take a look and see what you think?" And he opened it up, and he saw it, and he gasped. And then he said yes. And then to my surprise, really, we were both very giddy afterwards. I mean, we're both kind of, level-headed folks. But it was so nice to be in that giddy space. And so just another reason I'm just grateful for this novel, in addition to the kind people who've read it and said nice things, is that now we have that special memory in the back.
Absolutely. And as you said, Stephen is also an author. He has, he wrote Lily and the Octopus, and he wrote The Editor, which I have here, which you can get signed copies of the hardcover at Skylark as well.
So good.
So good. I talked about
a third one called The Guncle, which is, it's one of my favorites. It might be my favorite of his. And there's an excerpt of The Guncle in the back of that edition of The Editor. So you can have a little preview there.
Excellent. That is excellent for fans of Stephen, and I know there are plenty. So now you have two authors. What are the pros and cons of two authors when one of you is working on something? I'm sure there are lots and lots of pros, but what are a couple of good and bad things about having two authors?
So for me, it's all pro. I got to watch Steve go through this process for his other books. So I'm always asking him questions about contracts and process and tweeting and Zooming and the whole thing. And I sit here in our foyer area, and he's got an office in one of the back bedrooms. And so I'm in the main part, and I'm always yelling, "Can I bother you? Can I come see you?" I'm always going to him. And he's trying to write, but he's very generous about what are your questions? How can I help? That kind of thing. So for me, it's all pros. I've got a wonderful resource. For him, he might say some of the cons are he's interrupting me all the time. He's got all these questions, but he's very generous and loving. It's really fun. And we bounce ideas off each other, and I read his stuff. He reads my stuff. It's really quite lovely.
That's fantastic. And so aside from getting your book done, getting it out there, sitting back and waiting, for the marriage proposal, fighting a health battle, you also have been working on some other things. Can you let people know what some of the other things you've been working on are?
So my other creative projects, like I wrote a play called Tilda Swinton Answers an Ad on Craigslist. And before the pandemic, we were performing really all over the world. We did London, New York, San Francisco. We were at Edinburgh Fringe twice, which was really fun. And the play stars Instagram celebrity Tom Lenk as Tilda Swinton. You might also know him from the show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He played Andrew. And then Jane Entwistle is a good friend of mine, and she's in the play. And Mark Jude Sullivan, another dear friend, and another good friend, Tom DeTrinas. So I really got lucky with that one. It's a really fun script. And all my buddies said yes. And we've ended up traveling the world for 3 years doing this play. And I have a web series about testicular cancer called Last Will and Testicle, just based on my experiences. And then years ago, I wrote a feature film called Herpes Boy, about a guy with a birthmark on his face who accidentally and unwittingly becomes famous on the internet. And that one stars Beth Grant from the Mindy Project and Octavia Spencer, who since Herpes Boy has gone on to be a big star. And so those are a few of the projects I got going on.
That's a lot. So we do have a question from one of the people watching who would like to know, Melanie would like to know, what is the difference in the process between writing plays and writing a novel?
So the play, my play is about 100 pages. Well, it started as 100 pages. When we went to Edinburgh Fringe, we had to cut it down to an hour, so it's 60 pages. So I've got 60 pages to tell a story, and it's almost entirely dialogue. So it has to be sharp, it has to be tight, it has to service the plot, but also keep an audience's attention and keep an audience laughing if possible. So that meant a lot of like inviting friends over, sitting at a table, reading a draft. If they laughed, it stayed. If they didn't laugh, it got cut. Whereas a novel, Star is Born, is about 300 pages. So you have so much more room to not just tell a joke, but to describe the room that the joke is happening in, to talk about what the characters are thinking when they're saying the joke. Do they mean what they say? Are they deflecting from some other thing? And any facial expressions that maybe we would do on stage, or any like pratfalls. For a novel, you get to write all that stuff, and you get to embellish and that sort of thing. So that's the big difference. Is one of them is you know, they both require lots of fun imagination, but writing a play requires a lot of cutting and sculpting, and a little less of that for a novel. You can embellish more and be a little bit more flowy.
Those are two completely different processes. So kudos for being able to master them both.
Oh, that's nice of you to say. Thank you. I'm still working on it. It really is a learning process, and I learn every day. And to be honest, I still pick up this book and I'll read a paragraph. And just when I did that reading earlier, I was like, oh, I would change a couple things.
Yeah.
So the creative process is really an endless journey. But anyway,
Absolutely.
We're all on our own journeys.
Absolutely. Christina Powers would like to know if you are working on another book right now, and if so, can you give us any clues?
Oh, I wish I had a bunch of exciting stuff to talk about with that, but I'm really just kicking around ideas and outlining and all that. I have some short stories that maybe I'll expand, but that's also part of the process. I took a nap this afternoon, so I can try to be fresh and ready for you. And I woke up from the nap with ideas. And so the notes app on my phone is full of little moments. And I am certain that one of those moments is going to be the next book.
Excellent.
But I don't know which one.
Got to wait and see which one speaks to you.
Yeah.
And one of them will. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I need to know, what are you reading right now, or what have you read recently that has just blown you away?
I just finished Heart of Junk. I think that's by Luke Geddes. And it's about some drama that takes place. It's very humorous and lovely and heartwarming. It takes place in an antique mall. So an antique mall with a bunch of booths where people are selling different weird things like old magazines or old Barbie dolls. And no one really gets along, and it's chaotic and lovely. And it reminded me a little bit of Carrie and my time with her, because when we would travel, she always liked to visit. If they had an antique mall, we were going. or if they just had like a shop with antiques and weird things. She loved to buy weird, crazy things that would be conversation pieces for her house, or she's very generous. So some things she would buy to just give away to sometimes just the limo driver or a fan, or oftentimes a good friend or a family member or whatnot. So heart of junk. That's got my vote.
Yeah, that sounds actually really fascinating. I just wanted you to know that Melanie said the pickle monologue is her favorite part of your play, I assume?
Oh, fun. Yeah. There's a bit in there about how life is a little bit like a pickle. You have to, we're all really being pickled in this world. So I think that's what she's talking about. Oh, I love that. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, so a couple of other questions from people, and this is a good one. What is it like to be having a book published in the middle of a pandemic? How did that change the process for you?
Well, it's funny because it's a little weird, but it's also it also feels a little normal because I haven't experienced it the other way. However, I did see Stephen when he went through his publishing process. So I saw him go on tour. I saw him have big groups of friends at bookstores in our hometown. We had parties for him at our house, and we're not doing any of that now. So it's both things. It's a little weird, but it also feels very like, all right. Also, I'm generally an optimistic person, so I tend to think, I try at least to be someone who is not at war with reality. So this is where we are. This is where I am. I saw somewhere in LA, spray painted on a sidewalk, someone wrote, "Live this life." And that's really stuck with me. And so this life is, we're in the middle of a pandemic. So I do try to spend time, living this the best I can instead of being sad about the things that maybe aren't happening because of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. And embrace the things that are. Acceptance goes a long way, way. Okay, so somebody wants to know, have you had any feedback from Star Trek Obsessives?
I had a really good Star Trek moment. You said Star Trek, but you might mean Star Wars.
I think Star Wars is what they mean. Yes.
Well, William Shatner tweeted about the book, so very sweet, looking forward to reading, and that he's hearing good things. So that's my Star Trek connection.
Yes.
And on the Star Wars front, I think people are, it's interesting. Most people I encounter and meet love Carrie Fisher and Princess Leia. And Carrie used to talk about how she is, she gratefully walks in Princess Leia's boots. And so in that regard, I've heard from people who feel more connected to her, more appreciative of her, from stories in the book that carry her spirit and that make her feel like she's still here with us. And all of that warms my heart a bit. I love the idea that even though this is fiction and it's full of imagination and made up, that people might read some of this and be reminded of her, and that these pages might facilitate that in some way. Makes me very happy.
Yes, well, that's how it was for me. And somebody wanted to know, did Carrie give you any advice about writing?
She was very supportive. So one thing she would do that I picked up on was she liked to read before she would write. So she'd pick up a favorite book or a new book. Sometimes it was a book that she's read a gazillion times and underlined 1,000 sentences to get herself in like the rhythm of the prose and that kind of thing. So she did that, and I try to do that when possible. And she also liked to use a reverse dictionary. So if she maybe had an idea for a word, she would use this reverse dictionary to look up the origins of the word, and that would lead to other words. And she was truly a brilliant wordsmith. So you can see how some of that just kind of fueled all that. And on top of that, she hired me because of my writing background. So she was always really supportive. She watched that indie movie I made, and she tweeted great things about my web series. And So she was a creative, artful person, and she used to always say to people, take your broken heart and go make art. And so I hope that this book is also an extension of that. And I think she would be proud of me.
That was Carolyn Hutton's question is, what do you think Carrie would say about your book?
Oh, Carolyn, hi. Yeah, I think she'd be really proud of me. She used to encourage people to make art, to make the world colorful and interesting. And I hope I achieved some of that with this novel.
I believe you did, absolutely. I'm going to ask Alex, who's not on the screen here, but if there are any other questions, and while we wait to see if there are any last minute questions, I just want to reiterate that Byron's book is A Star is Bored. Elizabeth wants to know if they can see your dog.
Yeah, let's see. Hey, I think, well, Steven's watching. So
yes, he is.
Maybe he can come out, and maybe you can bring Tilda, and Tilda can say hi. So our dog is named Tilda after Tilda Swinton, because like the real Tilda Swinton actress, our dog is very beautiful, but also interesting looking. So we named her after Tilda Swinton, and we got her from the Lang Foundation, which is a group that takes kind of abused and battered dogs and stitches them up and gets them ready for adoption. So Tilda had been shot with BBs. She had broken ribs. She only has one eye. This is Steven, and this is Tilda.
Oh, yay. We get
Here's
both
Tilda.
of them.
Yay. Hi, baby. She's a little bit more of a Judi Dench these days than a Tilda Swinton as she gets older, but we love her so much, and she's been doing really good, and she
was just napping.
She loves to sleep. So that's what's happening now. She's like, what the heck are these guys doing? Good girl.
You got a collective aw. So there was a question, do we have autograph books? Yes, you will get a signed book plate if you order A Star is Bored from Skylark Bookshop. Look. Only their Skylark Bookshop, you're like Superman. But
we are committed.
You
have a cool
shirt.
Yeah, that shirt's important too. Yeah.
So another question is, have the film rights been sold? And if so, do you have somebody in mind that you would have play yourself and Carrie Fisher? Or Charlie and Kathi?
Charlie and Kathi. The film rights have not sold. I've just been focused on the book. But you know how these things are. The people behind the scenes are always chatting and working things out. So I hope something works out. I think this would be a fun series or film or something like that.
Anyone from Netflix is on this Zoom.
If you're watching, we're available. Yeah. And as for casting, I don't know. We joke. The thing is, it does feel like it could go in a gazillion different directions. It feels like you could do like a TV kind of thing where the Kathi Kannon character is played by like Elisa Kudrow or Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And then you could also go the movie route where it's, sometimes I think of it as like a Postcards from the Edge too, like where maybe Meryl is a kind of thing or whatever. And for me, I don't know. People have said I look like Elijah Wood, so maybe he's a good one. Or Tom Holland, who looks young and innocent, or Timothy Chalamet. Is that
you think you're Timothy?
Am I too? I'm a little older than him.
Jimmy Malia says Ben Platt as Charlie.
Ben Platt would be great. He'd be great. He's a genius.
And somebody else said Elijah Wood.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
James Malia also wants to know, what did Debbie Reynolds teach you about love?
Oh, well, first of all, James Malia is my editor, and he is a genius, and I'm so grateful to him for shepherding this book through. He was a real champion, and so thank you, James.
Thank you, James. I wrote a book called The Editor, so I know the importance.
He knows, yeah. What did Debbie Reynolds teach me about love? Well, Debbie did love unconditionally, and it was beautiful to watch her navigate her life with Carrie. They lived on the same property because Debbie wanted to be close to her. Some of Debbie and Carrie's family talked about when Debbie passed, that Debbie said, I want to go be with Carrie, and it's just so dang beautiful. And Debbie was a delight to be around, even when she wasn't busy with things like unconditional love and all that. When you were in her presence, she would look at you and lock eyes with you, and you were like, oh yeah, this is why you're a movie star. You've got this thing you can do where you just are present with people. So that's
we went to see the Singing in the Rain. I think it was the 65th anniversary when they re-released it in theaters a couple years ago. And boy, she was a star in her own right.
Yeah,
absolutely. Oh my gosh, absolutely. Absolutely. We also had somebody who just wants you guys to know that you are so cute.
Oh, thank you.
I can't disagree.
Was that Tilda, was that you typing in?
She just wants cookies.
Yeah, she's just trying to get dog treats. Yeah.
So I just want to remind everybody, the book is A Star Is Born. We also have Stephen's book. There are signed hardcover copies of Stephen's book available at Skylark as well. You know, they're both right here. You might as well just get them both. With Byron's book, you'll get a signed book plate and a limited edition collectible Sky-Ku bookmark. So all of our authors in our must-read TV series that started tonight and will be going as many Thursdays as we want. We're asking authors to do little haikus. We're printing them on limited edition bookmarks. And those are for the first 25 people only. So very limited. So email Skylark as soon as you can at mail@skylarkbookshop.com and get in the line so that you're in line for one of those bookmarks. You can tell them how many copies you want, and they will call you tomorrow to arrange for payment on that. This whole interview, delightful experience, will also be posted to the Skylark YouTube channel and will be available on Facebook. But I just can't thank you guys enough. Byron, this book, I've seen it everywhere. I've seen it on every list. It absolutely belongs on every list, every most anticipated and biggest book and everything. It belongs in all of those places. I love it. I'm so thrilled that I got to sit here with you tonight, even if it was virtually. I have my picture of Julia Claiborne Johnson in the corner because we have the Julia connection.
Yeah.
I say that she kind of started me on the whole author stalking journey. So thanks to her, I stalked you, both of you.
She's great.
And just thank you so much. And everybody get onto your email and get yourself a hardcover with a signed book plate and a limited edition Sky-Ku bookmark. And thank
you, Mary and Alex and Skylark. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you.
Yeah, support independent bookstores.
Yes.
We want them to run this out and be there in our communities when we're ready to fully reopen. So support your independent bookstore.
That's right.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye.